I apologize, I told you the wrong size. Those are 1/2 by 3s. Each one is going to get 2 flat washers, also 1/2 inch, and you're going to need 4 of them to attach the gearbox to the frame. Alright, so to get these bolts up underneath this upper rail and ran through the top side there, we're going to use this pry bar and push back this way, opening up the bottom hole of that lower rail, so that way the angle's correct enough for you to get that in. And once you've gotten both of them in, you're going to pull that pry bar back so that the angle is wrong and they won't fall out. They'll be stuck just like that. You can do them one at a time. I like to do both of them at the same time. I can't get that booger all the way out there. And once you've got them pushed all the way up in, like I said, go ahead and pull back a bit. And they'll stop right in place. Repeat the process on both sides. Now you're ready to set your gearbox in. Alright, once you've got your gearbox set on top, there's a couple things to check. One, your yellow line matches with this weld on the ring here. Just want them perfectly aligned. And then you're going to look back at that shaft and make sure that it's not coming into contact with this base plate here. Otherwise it's going to slow down the fan, and over use it's going to waller out that hole there. Another thing that you would like to check is that there's a generally even spacing all the way around the bottom plate there. Next, we're going to install the lower L clamps, which will clamp the gearbox to the frame. Alright, since I already had everything aligned and where I wanted it at here, I went ahead and tightened down my bolts. Now, a couple things you want to check here once you've installed these. Just give those washers a little tap. If they don't move, nice and tight. If they got some movement to them, go ahead and give them a few more turns. Another thing that you want to check is you want to make sure that this lower L has plenty of grab on that base plate there. Sometimes when you've pried that upper L out a bit to get those bolts in or to stay in, you've changed the angle enough to where that the lower L isn't biting enough on this. So if that is the case, it's a real simple fix. You just take a soft mallet and give it a whack a couple times here until it's bent over enough to where it's properly holding your gearbox down. Alright, for our next step, we're going to be attaching the Z-bars to the gearbox and affixing them to the frame. To accomplish this, you're going to need 2 left and 2 right Z-bars. You're going to need 8 3/8 by 1 with a lock washer on each. And it's helpful to have a pry bar and these spacers. So our spacers are going to hold the base up high enough so that the holes on the frame and the holes on the gearbox itself align enough for you to get your Z-bars attached. To accomplish that, we'll take our pry bar right underneath the fan and lift it up just enough to get this spacer in there. Boom. Then do it on the other side. If you're doing this at home, you can cut a piece of block to put in here to assist you if you want. Alright, using your 3/8 by 1 with the lock washer on the outside of your Z-bar, you're going to affix your Z-bar to the gearbox. Do not tighten them down yet. We still have a couple more steps to go before this portion of the build is complete. All right, next you're going to want to grab 4 1/2x3s, 4 half flat washers, 4 half nuts, and 4 half lock washers. And the reason why we didn't tighten those 3/8 by 1s is because getting these bolts in with those 3/8 bolts tightened is nearly impossible. So we're going to do the one side here to show you. You got your bolt coming in from the inside out, flat washer, lock washer, and nut. Your next step, you're going to gather a 9/16 socket and a 3/4 inch socket. Starting with your 3/8 bolts, go ahead and tighten all 8 down. Then move over to your 1/2 inch bolts and tighten those down. All right, some things to watch out for. You do want to make sure that all of your bolts are obviously tightened down. But this gearbox, sometimes the impact will lie to you and tell you it's tightened all the way down. So visually inspect all 8 of these to make sure they're completely seated and those lock washers are compressed. After you have ensured that everybody is tightened down correctly, you're going to come back in and remove these spacers. If you're doing this at home, remove that block. Do not want that in there when you go to operate this machine. All right, with your gearbox completely installed, your spacers have come out. Now we're going to move around to the back side of the unit and finish installing the 1148 cable to the frame of the 2440. All right, to complete this portion of the build, you're going to need your 2440 pointer. You're going to need its mounting pin, a clevis and its mounting pins, and the other half of your nut and lock washer for the 1148. You'll also need your opening gauge sticker and this spacer bar. All right, first thing we're going to do is get our nut and lock washer on the 1148. One-handed, I'm sorry. There we go. No, my gosh. Voila. All right, now we're going to feed the bottom of that 1148 into this top hole of this bracket here. And we're going to take the other lock washer and nut, the last pieces here, should be in your little package. And with the lock washer sandwiching that mounting bracket. Next thing we're going to do is attach our clevis to the end of the 1148. Now you want to get this one pretty far up the threads, but you want to be careful not to leave too much out the bottom here. Otherwise, the bottom portion of the 1148 will come into contact with the bottom of that pointer and it won't actuate properly. So if you have that problem, just take it back off and run it down a few threads until you have enough space in there for your pointer to move in and out of this clevis. Next, you're going to take your clevis, slide it to where the holes are aligned, and take your mounting pin and locking pin and lock it into place. Alright, next we're going to connect the clevis to the pointer. The clevis has the 2 holes, and the pointer has the 1. You just want to get them aligned, and then get your little locking pin in there. cotter pin on the back side goes through the holes of that locking pin. Then we're going to take a pair of pliers and bend that over so it doesn't come out. All right, now that you have your clevis attached to your pointer, our next step is going to be putting in our spacer bar. And this is going to give us the proper spacing so that the customer's hydraulic cylinder fits in properly and they have the correct opening setting. It's real simple. One side goes in that hole, this side goes in that hole. With our spacer bar in place, now we can go through and start locking down our nuts and lock washers, both on the bottom and the top. First, we need to inspect the opening plate and make sure that it is completely closed. You're going to want to do that before and after tightening these nuts. Sometimes when you're going to tighten them down, it'll pull that cable back just enough to where if the customer went to go pour in and thought his plate was closed all the way, he might be leaking out some. So make sure you check that. To tighten these down all the way, you're just going to use a 1-inch wrench. With both sides of our 1148 cable completely tight. Once again, we're going to check that opening plate, make sure she's completely closed still. And then we're going to take our spring, attach it to the long side of the spring will attach to the back side of the clevis behind your opening plate. Then you're going to take this orange handled hook, or if you're at home you can use a pair of channel locks, and you're going to pull the small side of this spring out to that little bottom hole in the back side of this mounting bracket. What you're going to want to make sure that you do is make sure that that spring is seated all the way in to that hole. Just kind of grab one end of it and tuck it in there so that way it doesn't pop out on you. With our spacer bracket still in place, we're going to take our opening sticker here. This is our opening gauge sticker. We're going to align the 0 with the end of that pointer. Now I'm going to try to do this one-handed, but making sure that our sticker is level across the top here, and that our 0 stays on the end of that pointer. We're going to push one side underneath, getting that adhesive on, grabbing the other side. Make sure you get all them bubbles out. I can't believe I did that one-handed. All right, with our clevis attached, our spring in, and our sticker on, now you can take that spacer bar out, and we'll move on to the next step. All right, the final part of this build before we move on to just the finishing touches is attaching this deflector shield. Back behind here, just like that. All right, using these 2 clamps, bring the deflector shield up, being careful to try to make sure that it's as evenly spaced on both sides as possible. We'll take the first clamp and give it a couple quick tugs. You're not going to go too crazy with it because you're going to need to check its spacing. And what I'm checking for here is that the deflector shield isn't coming into contact with the clevis or the fan blades. Also, while we're up here, we're going to make sure that it's level all the way across and that's evenly spaced. Alright, using a 3/8 socket and 2 self-taps, we're going to attach the deflector shield to the frame. But before you do that, give your fan a nice spin and make sure you don't hear it coming into contact with that deflector shield. Now, I should point out that the piece of this frame here often has a seam on the steel that runs right in line with that hole. If you're having trouble getting the self-tapper through, that is the issue. That seam is slightly thicker and a bit tougher to get through with just a self-tap. So you're gonna have to break out the drill bit. So if you're having issues getting your self-tapper in, that's what it is. The drill bit that I use for that hole is a 3/16. I would not go any larger than that. Otherwise, you are not going to get your self-tapper in. You can go slightly smaller if you'd like, but do not go any larger. Now that your deflector shield is attached, go ahead and spin your fan one more time. Make sure it's not coming into contact with your deflector shield. Sometimes when you're putting your self-taps in, it will shift this shield slightly up or down. So make sure that you still have your proper spacing. Our 2440 build is complete. Now it's just time for the finishing touches. Next, you're going to grab 2 of your 1 1/8 by 6 3/8 mounting pins and 1 of your 3/4 by 4 mounting pins. This is for your 3-point mounting system. Next, you're going to take 3 of your linch pins and lock those mounting pins into place. All right, you're going to grab an 1133 PTO, a 2440 manual, a large sealable bag, and 1 of your cold rolled shear pins. You're going to tape that around your PTO, or you're going to put all of that into the bag and tape it around your PTO. I like to put the opening underneath the end flap, so that way if this gets rained on, the customer still has their owner's manual. Then you're going to zip tie it to the unit, making sure that this is tight enough that it's not flopping around, causing scrapes and damage on its way to the customer. All right, that is a completely finished 2440. Do a slow walk around so you can see the placement of the stickers. Thank you for watching. Have a fantastic day.